I wasn't muted. My mic just wasn't picking up audio. Dude, my mic is being fucking weird. I don't know if it's just like old and starting to have issues or what. I unmuted myself. But hello. Do you like me and my son? Yeah, apparently, it wasn't picking up any audio at all. But maybe my default mic got fucked up on my computer. Let me see. Also, how is the music volume for you guys? Okay. Let me see something. Input. Yeah, microphone, USB PNP audio device. Okay, yeah, that is the default. Output, headphones. Why is everything fighting me then? Thanks, Poey! I love it! I'm gonna be just like reading the Silmarillion, so I don't know how this is gonna go. We're gonna be reading a very difficult book together. Need to turn down the music volume. I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes to see if anybody else wants to pop in. But yeah, then I will start getting to reading. And if people end up liking this type of stream, I got the book in my hand right now. I own this shit. I have this shit in my hands. It's the one I read from, It's old as shit. It's the one that I read on stream the other day. It's, 1979. Why is using Prime Sub on mobile so annoying? You just have to hit the little thingy. Use your Prime Sub on someone else though. Getting a picture of the book on stream is gonna be a pain. Why must you ask these things of me? I have no good place on my desk to take a picture. Oh, that's weird. I don't... Shadow, I'm just gonna send you the picture of the book. Already did it? Brr. Unneeded. Brr. Okay. Now, question, do you guys want me to read the foreword? The forward, I guess? Forward? Where'd that page go? Forward. It's not forward, it's F-O-R-E-W-O-R-D. And there's an ad, and every time there's gonna be an ad, I'll take an ad break. Just so, nobody misses anything. Just in case, you know. I feel as though I don't need to read the forward. It just explains about what the Silmarillion is. Before I get started in the book, how's everyone's day going? I want to know. I want to know if you all are having a good day. I also need to change my chat boxes. I could always just get rid of the, like, Christmas stuff. What do you think? Should I get rid of, like, the little Christmas stuff and have, like, the chat box be there, or just keep it the same for this stream? Oh, I'm sorry, Shadow. That sucks. As far as I know, my mouse still hasn't fucking shipped yet, and it's supposed to get here tomorrow, so I don't know how that's gonna happen. I can double check and see if it's been shipped yet, but... yeah, why does it say it's arriving tomorrow by 10 p.m. if it hasn't shipped yet? Keep it sane for this stream should be fine. Oh, same. Okay. I just, you don't know how to type, so. I have never done a book stream before. Obviously. So I'm not exactly sure how to do this or go about this, but if people like it, maybe we could read more books in the future. Possibly ones that are less difficult, because this is gonna be, like, fucking calculus. But hopefully my autistic tones will be soothing and whateverness to people. Twitch has got an ad in 1 minute and 36 seconds. The question is whether or not... should I just run it now? I'll just run it now, and then after the ad, we'll start. I'll just run it now, okay? So I'm letting everyone know I'm gonna run the ad now. And then it should disable the pre-rolls for a little bit. But my ads are only set to 30 seconds now, so it shouldn't be too horrible. And I think a lot, like half the time the ads are just those ones that make the stream smaller, and then they'll have like the ads around it, which I like those a lot better. Because the streamer can't just stop whenever there's an ad, and I always feel like my ads happen whenever something is important's happening. Okay, so the next ad should be in an hour. Okay. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for the Silmarillion? And I apologize in advance for any mispronunciations of both the Tolkien words and names and just normal words, because there's gonna be a lot of words in here that I'm probably not gonna fucking know. But are you guys ready? If you want to just send emotes to let me know. Anything. Delay is a hell of a drug. That's a ruby emote. Alright, I think that means we're good. Oh my god, guns. Guns! Guns don't exist in this world. Okay. Ah! Fuck. I just got fucking jump scared by a lobster. I hate air. Okay, so. Why am I nervous for reading a fucking book? I feel like I'm in school again. Okay. Okay, we're starting. We're not reading the forward. We're going straight into In Lunedale, the music of Anir. Please don't grade me. Please. Okay. There was Eru, the one, who in Arda is called Iluvatar, and he made first the Anir, the holy ones, that were the offspring of his thought, and they were to him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding them with themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. But for a long while they sang only each alone, or but few together, while the rest hearkened, for each comprehended only that part of the mind of Iluvatar from which he came. And in the understanding of their brethren they grew slowly. Yet ever as they listened, they came to deeper understanding and increased in unison and harmony. And it came to pass that Iluvatar called together all the Aenir and declared them a mighty theme, unfolding to them things greater and more wonderful than he had yet revealed, and the glory of its beginning and the splendor of its end amazed the Aenir, so they bowed before Iluvatar and were silent. Then Iluvatar said to them, If the theme that I have declared to you, of the theme that I have declared to you, I will now that ye make in harmony together a great music, and since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, ye shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, and each with his own thoughts and devices, if he will. I will sit and hearken, and be glad be glad through you great beauty has been wakened into song. And then the voices of the Aenir, like unto harps and lutes, and pipes and trumpets, and viols and organs, and like unto countless choirs singing with words, began to fashion the theme of Iluvatar into a great music. And a sound arose, endless interchanging melodies, woven in harmony that passed beyond hearing into the depths and into the heights, and the places of the dwelling of Iluvatar were filled to overflowing. And the music and the echo of the music went out into the void, and it was not void. Never since have the Aenir made any music like to this music, though it has been said that a greater still shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of Aenir and the children of Iluvatar after the end of days. Then the themes of Iluvatar shall be played aright, and take being into the moment of their utterance. And for all shall then understand fully his intent in their part, and each shall know the comprehension of each. And Iluvatar shall give to their thoughts the secret fire, being well pleased. Okay. I have finished, like, a page. But now how the fuck do I pronounce this? Iluvatar shall give to their thoughts a secret fire. But now Iluvatar sat and hearkened, and for a great while it seemed good to him, for in the music there were no flaws. But as the theme progressed, it came the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Iluvatar. For he sought therein to increase the power and glory of the part assigned to himself. To Melkor, among the Aenir, had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He had gone often alone into the void places, seeking the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness. Yet he found not the fire, for it is with Iluvatar. But being alone, he had begun to conceive thoughts of his own, unlike those of his brethren. I have my, what is it called? Liquid IV. I think is what it's called. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord rose about him, and many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thought was disturbed, and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to his, rather than the thought that which they had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. But Iluvatar sat and hearkened until it seemed that about his throne there was a raging storm, as of dark waters that made war upon one another in an endless wrath that would not be assuaged. Then Iluvatar rose, and the Aenir perceived that he smiled, and he lifted up his hand, and a new theme began amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melkor rose in uproar and contended with it, and again there was a war of sound more violent than before, and many of the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar rose, and the Ainur perceived that his countenance was stern, and he lifted up his right hand, and behold! A third theme grew amid the confusion, and it was unlike the others, for it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds, delicate and delicate melodies, but it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity. Profundity! That's a word. And it seemed, at last, there were two musics progressing at one time before the seat of Iluvatar, and they were utterly at variance. The one was deep, wide, and beautiful, but slow and blended with an immeasurable sorrow, from which its beauty chiefly came. The other had now achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain, and endlessly repeated, and it had little harmony, but rather a clamorous unison of many trumpets, braying upon few notes, and it essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice, but it seemed that its most triumphant noises were taken by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern. In the midst of this strife, whereas the halls of Iluvatar shook and a tremor ran into the silences yet unmoved, Iluvatar rose a third time, and his face was terrible to behold. Then he raised up both his hands, and in one chord, deeper than the abyss, and higher than the firmament, piercing as the light of the eye of Iluvatar, the music ceased. Then Iluvatar spoke, and he said, "Mighty are the Ainur, and the mightiest among them is Melkor, but that he may know, and all the Ainur, that I am Iluvatar, and these things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, and that ye may see what ye have done, and thou, Melkor, shall see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined." Then the Ainur were afraid, and they did not yet comprehend the words that were said to them, and Melkor was filled with shame, of which came secret anger. But Iluvatar arose in the splendor, and he went forth from the fair regions that he had made for the Ainur, and the Ainur followed him. But when they were to come into the void, Iluvatar said to them, "Behold your music!" And he showed to them a vision, giving them sight where before there was only hearing, and they saw a new world made visible before them, and it was globed amid the void, and it was sustained therein, but not of it. And as they looked and wondered, this world began to unfold its history, and it seemed to them that it lived and grew. And when the Ainur had gazed for a while and were silent, Iluvatar said again, "Behold your music! This is your minstrelsy, and each of you shall find contained herein, amid the design I set before you, all those things which it may seem that he himself devised or added. And thou, Melkor, will discover all the secret thoughts of thy mind, and will perceive that they are but a part of a whole and tributary to its glory." And many other things Iluvatar spoke to the Ainur at that time, and because of their memory of his words, and the knowledge that each has of the music that he himself made, the Ainur knew much of what was, what is to come, and few things are unseen by them. Yet some things there are that they cannot see, neither alone nor taking counsel together, for to none but himself has Iluvatar revealed that all that he has in store, and in every age there come forth things that are new and hath not foretelling, for they do not proceed from the past. And so it was that his vision of the world was played before them, and Ainur saw it contained things which they had not thought, and they with amazement of the coming of the children of Iluvatar, and the habitation that was prepared for them. They perceived that they themselves in the labor of their music had been busy with the preparation of this dwelling, yet they knew not that it had any purpose beyond its own beauty, for the children of Iluvatar were convinced by him alone, and they came with the third theme. They were not in the theme which Iluvatar propounded at the beginning, and none of the Aenir had part in their making. Therefore, when they beheld them, the more did they love them, being things other than themselves, strange and free, wherein they saw the mind of Iluvatar reflected anew, and learned yet a little more of his wisdom, which otherwise would have been hidden from even the Aenir. Now the children of Iluvatar are elves and men, the firstborn and the followers, and amid all the splendors of the world, its vast halls and spaces, its wheeling fires, Iluvatar chose a place for their habitation in the depths of time and in the midst of innumerable stars. And this habitation might seem a little thing to those who consider only the majesty of the Aenir, and not their terrible sharpness. As who should take the whole field of Arda for the foundation of a pillar, and so raise it until the cone of its summit were more bitter than a needle. Bitter than a needle, interesting. Or who would consider only the immeasurable vastness of the world, which still the Aenir are shaping, and not the minute precision to which they had shaped all things therein. But when the Aenir had beheld the habitation in a vision, and had seen the children of Iluvatar arise therein, then many of the most mighty among them bent all their thought and their desire towards that place. And of these Melkor was the chief, even as he was in the beginning of the greatest of the Aenir who took part of the music. And he feigned, even to himself at first, that he desired to go thither and order all things for the good of the children of Iluvatar, controlling the turmoils of heat and the cold that had come to pass through him. But he desired rather to subdue his will to both elves and men, envying the gifts with which Iluvatar promised to endow them. And he wished himself to have subjects and servants, and to be called Lord, and to be a master over all other wills. But the other Aenir looked upon this habitation set within the vast spaces of the world, which the elves called Arda, the earth, and their hearts rejoiced with light, and their eyes beholding many colors were filled with gladness. But because of the roaring of the sea they felt a great unquiet, and they observed the winds in the air, and the matters of which Arda was made, of iron and stone and silver and gold and many other substances. But of all these water they most greatly praised, and it is said by the Eladar that in the water there lives yet the echo of the music of the Aenir more than in any substance else that is in this earth. And many of the children of the Iluvatar hearken still unsated to the voices of the sea, and yet know not for what they listen. Now to water that Anu, whom the elves called Ulmo, turned his thought, and of all most deeply was he instructed by Iluvatar in the music. But in the airs and the winds Manwë most had pondered, who is the most noblest of the Aenir. The fabric of the earth, and Elue had thought, to whom Iluvatar had given the skill and knowledge scarce less than to Melkor. But the delight and pride of Elue is in the deed of making, and in the thing made, and neither in possession nor in his own mastery. Wherefore he gives and hoards not, and is free from care, passing ever on to some new work. Let me take a drink. We're on page 9, guys. How are you guys doing? Are your brains melting yet? So far we have Iluvatar, who created basically the universe through song, and he has the Aenir, who are, I guess, the class below him, and they helped weave together the song. But you also had Melkor, who kind of corrupted the song and has a bit of like jealousy and wants to control. So, yeah, that's how it is so far, I guess. That's my best interpretation. No promises on me interpreting this very well, but I'll do my best. Bruh, I'm reading it and I feel like I'm like fucking blanking. Okay, let's keep going. And Iluvatar spoke to Ulmo and said, "Seest thou not how here in this little realm, in the depths of time, Melkor hath made war upon thy province? He hath bethought him of bitter cold immoderate, and it hath not destroyed the beauty of thy fountains nor of thy clear pools. Behold the snow, and the cunning work of frost. Melkor hath devised heats of fire without restraint, and hath not dried up thy desire nor utterly quelled the music of the sea. Behold rather the height and glory of the clouds, and the ever-changing mists, and listen to the fall of the rain upon the earth, and in these clouds thou art drawn near to Manwë, thy friend, whom thou lovest." Then Ulmo answered, "Truly, water is become now fairer than my heart imagined. Neither had my secret thought conceived the snowflake, nor in all my music was contained the falling of rain. I will seek Manwë, that he and I may make melodies forever to thy delight. And Manwë and Ulmo have from the beginning been allied, in all things have served most faithfully the purpose of Iluvatar." But even as Ulmo spoke, and while the Ainur were yet gazing upon this vision, it was taken away and hidden from their sight, and it seemed to them that in the moment they perceived a new thing, darkness, which they had not known before except in thought, but they had become enamored by the beauty of vision and engrossed in the unfolding of the world which came there to being, and their minds were filled with it, for the history was incomplete, and the circles of time not full wrought when the vision was taken away. And some have said that the vision ceased ere the fulfillment of the dominion of men and the feeding of the firstborn. Wherever, though, the music is over all, the Valar have not seen as with sight the later ages or the ending of the world. Then there was unrest among the Ainur, but Iluvatar called to them and said, "I know the desire of your minds, that what ye have seen should verily be. Not only in your thought, but even as ye yourselves are in yet another. Therefore I say, Ea, let these things be, and I will send forth into the void the flame imperishable. And it shall be at the heart of the world, and the world shall be, and those of you that may go down onto it." And suddenly the Ainur saw afar off a light, as it were a cloud with a living heart of flame, and they knew that this was no vision only, but that Iluvatar had made a new thing, Ea, the world that is. Thus it came to pass that of the Ainur some abode still with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world, but others, and among them many of the greatest and most fair, took the leave of Iluvatar and descended onto it. But this condition Iluvatar made, or it is the necessity of their love, that their power should be thenceforward be contained and bound in the world, to be within it forever, until it is complete, so that they are its life and it is theirs. Therefore they are named the Valar, powers of the world. But when the Valar entered into Ea, they were at first astounded and at a loss, for it was as not which it was not was for it was as if naught was yet made which they had seen in the vision, and all was but on point to begin, and yet unshaped, and it was dark. For the great music had been but the growth and flowering of the thought within the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshadowing. But now they had entered in it at the beginning of time, and the Valar perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and foresung, and that they must achieve it. And so began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, in ages unaccounted and forgotten, until in the deeps of time and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea there came to be that hour and the place where was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar, and in this work the chief part was taken by Manwë and Alue and Ulmo, but Melkor too was there from the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it if he might to his own desires and purposes. He kindled great fires. When therefore earth was yet young and still full of flame, Melkor coveted it, and he said to the other Valar, "This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself." But Manwë was the brother of Melkor and in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor. And he called unto himself many spirits, both greater and less, and they came down into the fields of Arda and aided Manwë, lest Melkor hinder the fulfillment of their labor forever, and the earth shall wither ere it flowered. And Manwë said unto Melkor, "This kingdom shalt not take for thine own wrongfully, for many others have labored here no less than thou." And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar. And for that time Melkor withdrew and departed to other regions, and did there what he would, but he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda from his heart. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn into the world by the love of children of Iluvatar, with whom they hoped, they took shape after that manner which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, save only in the majesty and splendor. Moreover, their shape comes of their knowledge of the visible world, rather than of the world itself, and they need it not, save only as we use raiment, and yet we may be naked and suffer no loss of our being. Therefore the Valar may walk, if they will, unclad, and then even the Eldar cannot clearly perceive them, though they may be present. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar take upon them forms, some as of male and some as of female. For that difference of temper they had even from their beginning, and it is but bodied forth in the choice of each, not made by the choice. Even as with us male and female may be shown by the raiment, but is not made thereby. But the shapes wherein the great ones may array themselves are not at all times like to the shapes of kings and queens of the children of Iluvatar. For at times they may clothe themselves in their own thought, made visible in forms of majesty and dread. And the Valar drew unto them many companions, some less, some well nigh as great as themselves, and they labored together in the ordering of the earth and the curbing of its tumults. Then Melkor saw what was done, and that the Valar walked on earth as powers visible, clad in the raiment of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see, and blissful, and that the earth was becoming as a garden for their delight, for its turmoils were subdued. His envy grew then greater within him, and he also took visible form, but because of his mood and the malice that burned in him, that form was dark and terrible, and he descended upon Arda in power and majesty greater than any of the other Valar. And as has a mountain that wades in the sea, and has its head above the clouds, and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire, and the light of the eyes of Melkor was like a flame that withers with heat and pierces a deadly cold. Thus began the first battle of the Valar with Melkor for its dominion of Arda, and of those tumults the elves know but little, for what has here been declared is come from the Valar themselves, with whom the Eladale spoke in the land of Valinor, and by whom they were instructed, but little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before coming to the elves. Yet it is told among the Eldar that the Valar endeavored ever, in despite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn. And they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys they delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor drew them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. and not have peace nor come to lasting growth. For as surely as the Valar began to labor, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. And yet their labor was not all in vain. And though nowhere and in no work was their will and purpose wholly fulfilled, and in all things were in hue and shape other than the Valar had first intended, slowly, nonetheless, the earth was fashioned and made firm, and thus was the habitation of the children of Ilúvatar established, and the last in the depths of time and amidst innumerable stars. So, despite Melkor's continuous muddling, the Valar were working very hard to create the world in the image that Ilúvatar had originally showed them within the weaving of the song. But Melkor was being a little shit, consistently trying to fuck things up. Okay. We have finished the first chunk. Yay! What do you guys think? Your brains hurt? Mine does. We are on page 17. I'm mush. I feel that, dude. I feel that. I feel that in my soul. Pulling me down the drain. You ready for more? Are you ready for more, Shadow? Oh, fuck, we're not even to chapter 1. Chapter 1 starts on page 29. You know, you don't have to say if it's too much for you. That's okay. We're just vibing. We're just reading. In the beginning of days. Okay. Do not tell me you have to go potty. Son of a bitch, the dog has to go potty. Dude, Sephiroth, guess what? There's more. There's Vala Quinta, which is 17 to 29. But the dog has to go potty, so I will be right back. It's gonna be about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm gonna run an ad just so we don't have to worry about that. And I'll be on the BRB screen, but I will rush as fast as I can and be right back. I'm back. I definitely wasn't running. I would never run. Ah. Whew. Hello. I'm not winded. I would never be. There it is. Okay. Yeah, I'm exasperated. Totes. 100% on God, no cap. Also, hi Val! I am reading the Silmarillion. Basically the history book of Lord of the Rings stuff. Middle Earth, all that shit. Just fair warning. I think I'm already melting people's brains. We're 17 pages in. Are y'all ready for more? Okay. Okay, this is... my contact! No! Also, my eyes, like, sometimes, like, the hesitation in, like, me reading stuff is literally, like, my contacts don't like me reading. So sometimes everything goes blurry. Because my contacts help me see stuff far away. So sometimes, especially when I'm reading for a long time, stuff starts going blurry. And that's why I hesitate. I'll be like, oh, fuck, I can't, trying to get my eyes to focus. Okay, this is Valaquenta, account of the Valar and Maiar according to the lore of the Eladar. Yeah. If anyone has any questions as we go along, feel free to ask them. I might not have answers. Okay. In the beginning of Eru, the one, who in the Elvish tongue is named Iluvatar, made the Ainur of his thought, and they made a great music before him. In this music the world was begun, for Iluvatar made visible the song of the Ainur, and they beheld it as a light in the darkness. And many among them became enamored by its beauty, and of its history which they saw the beginning and unfolding as in a vision. Therefore Iluvatar gave to their vision being, and set it amid the void, and the secret fire was sent to burn at the heart of the world, and it was called Ea. And then those of the Ainur who desired it arose and entered into the world at the beginning of time, and it was their task to achieve it, and by their labors to fulfill the vision which they had seen. Long they labored in the regions of Ea, which are vast beyond the thought of elves and men, until in the time appointed was made Arda, the kingdom of earth. And then they put the raiment of earth and descended into it and dwelt therein. Of the Valar. The great among these spirits, the elves named the Valar, the powers of Arda, and men have often called them gods. The lords of the Valar are 7, and the Valar, the queens of the Valar, are 7 also. These are their names in the Elvish tongue as it was spoken in Valinor, though they have other names in the speech of elves in Middle-earth, and their names among men are manifold. The names of the lords in due order, Menwe, Ulmo, Ule, Orome, Mandos, Loren, and Tulkas. And the names of the queens are Varda, Yavanna, Nienna, Este, Vare, Vanna, and Nessa. Melkor is counted no longer among the Valar, and his name is not spoken upon the earth. Manwë and Melkor were brethren in the thought of Iluvatar, and the mightiest of those Ainur who came into the world was in his beginning Melkor, but Manwë is dearest to Iluvatar and understands most clearly his purposes, and he was appointed to be, in the fullness of time, the first of all kings, lord of the realm of Arda and ruler of all that dwell therein. And in Arda his delight in the winds and the clouds, and in all the regions of the air, from the heights of the depth to the depths, from the utmost borders of the vale of Arda to the breezes that blow in the grass. Sulmo he is surnamed, lord of the breath of Arda. All swift birds, strong of wind, he loves, and they come and go at his bidding. With Manwë dwells Varda, lady of the stars, who knows all the regions of Ea. Too great is her beauty to be declared in the words of men nor of elves, for the light of Iluvatar lives still in her face. In light is her power and her joy. Out of the depths of Ea she came to the aid of Manwë, for Melkor she knew from before the making of music and rejected him, and he hated her, and feared her more than all the others whom Eru made. So Melkor got fucking rejected. Manwë and Varda are seldom parted, and they remain in Valinor. Their halls are above the everlasting snow upon Olasé, and the uttermost tower of Taniquetalli, the tallest of all mountains upon earth. When Manwë there ascends his throne and looks forth, if Varda is beside him, he sees further than all other eyes, through mists, through darkness, and over leagues of the sea. And if Manwë is with her, Varda hears more clearly than all other ears the sound of voices that cry from east to west, from the hills and valleys, and from the dark places that Melkor has made upon the earth. Of all the great ones who dwell in this world, the elves hold Varda in most in reverence and love. Elbreth they name her, and they call upon her name out of the shadows of Middle-earth, and uplift it into song at the rising of the stars. Ulmo is the lord of the waters. He is alone. He dwells nowhere long, but moves as he will in all the deep waters about the earth or under the earth. He is next in might to Manwë, and before Valinor he was made closest to him in friendship. But thereafter went seldom to the councils of the Valar, unless great matters were in debate. For he kept all Arda in thought, and he has no need of any resting place. Moreover, he does not love to walk upon the land, and will seldom clothe himself in a body after the manner of his peers. Of the great children of Eru beheld him, and were filled with great dread, for the rising of the king of the sea was terrible, as a mounting wave that strides the land, with dark helm foam crested and raiment of mail shimmering from silver down into shadows of green. The trumpets of Manwë are loud, but Ulmo's voice is deep as the depths of the ocean, which he has only seen. He has only seen. Nonetheless, Ulmo loves both elves and men, and never abandoned them, not even when they lay under the wrath of the Valar. At times he will come unseen to the shores of Middle-earth, or pass far inland up the first of the sea, and there make music upon his great horns, the Ulumari, that are wrought of white shell, and those to whom that music comes to hear it ever after into their hearts, and longing for the sea never leaves them again. But mostly Ulmo speaks to those who dwell in Middle-earth with voices that are heard only as the music of water. For all seas, lakes, rivers, fountains, and springs are in his government, and so that the elves say the spirit of Ulmo runs in all the veins of the world. Thus news comes to Ulmo, even in the deeps of all needs and griefs of Arda, which otherwise would be hidden from Manwë. He is the water! Ulmo is the water. Ule has might little less than Ulmo. His lordship is over all substances which Arda is made. In the beginning he wrought much friendship with Manwë and Ulmo, and the fashioning of all lands was his labor. He is a smith and a master of all crafts, and he delights in works of skill, however small, as much in the mighty building of old. His are the gems that lie deep in the earth, and the gold that is fair in the hand, no less than the walls of the mountains and the basins of the sea. The Noldor learned most of him, and he was ever their friend. Melkor was jealous of him, for Alu was most like himself in thought and powers, and there was long strife between them. in which Melkor ever marred or undid the works of Elu. And Elu grew weary in repairing the tumults and disorders of Melkor. Both also desired to make things of their own that should be new and unthought of by others, and delighted in the praise of their skill. But Elu remained faithful to Eru and submitted all that he did to his will, and he did not envy the works of others, but sought and gave counsel, whereas Melkor spent his spirit in envy and hate, until at last he could make nothing save in mockery for the thought of others, and all their works he destroyed if he could. The spouse of Elu is Yavanna, the giver of fruits. She is a lover of all things that grow in the earth, and all their countless forms she holds in her mind, from trees like towers and forests long ago to the moss upon stones, or the small secret things in the mold. And reverenced Yavanna is next to Varda among the queens of Valinor. In the form of a woman she is tall, and robed in green, but at all times she takes other shapes. Some there are who have seen her standing like a tree under heaven, crowned with the sun, and from its branches there spilled a golden dew upon the barren earth, and it grew green with corn. But the roots of the tree were in the waters of Ulmo, and the winds of Manwë spoke in its leaves. Kementari, queen of the earth, she is surnamed in the Eladarian tongue. The Fienturi, master of spirits, are brethren, and yet they are called most often Mandos and Loren. Like Lothlorien? Oh. Mandos and Loren. Yet these are rightly the names of places of their dwelling. Their true names are Namo and Irmo. Namo, the elder, dwells in Mandos, which is westward in Valinor. He is the keeper of the houses of the dead, and the summoner of spirits of the slain. He forgets nothing, and he knows all things that should be, save only those that lie still in the freedom of Ilúvatar. He is the doomsman of the Valar, but he pronounces his dooms and judgments only at the bidding of Manwë. Vere, the weaver, is his spouse, who weaves all things that have ever been in time into her storied webs, and in the halls of Mandos that ever widen as the ages pass, are clothed with them. Irmo is the younger is the master of visions and dreams, and Loren are his gardens in the land of Valar, and they are the fairest of all places in the world, filled with many spirits. Este, the gentle, healer of hurts and weariness, is his spouse. Gray is her raiment, and rest is her gift. She walks not by day, but sleeps upon an island in the tree-shadowed lake of Lorelin. From the fountains of Irmo and Este, all those who dwell in Valinor draw refreshment, and often Valar come themselves to Loren, and there find repose and easing of the burden of Arda. Mightier than Este is Nienna, sister of the Fienturi. She dwells alone. She is acquainted with grief and mourns for every wound that Arda has suffered in the marring of Melkor. So great is her sorrow, as the music unfolded, that her song turned into lamentation long before its end, and the sound of mourning was woven into the themes of the world before it began. Oh, that's sad. That's sad. Fuck you, Melkor. Mourning got woven into the world because Melkor was being a douche and wanted to do things his way. It was so sad. But she does not weep for herself, and those who hearken to her learn pity and endurance in hope. Her halls are west of west, upon the borders of the world, and she comes seldom into the city of Valimar, where all is glad. She goes rather to the halls of Mandos, which are near to her own, and all those in wait in Mandos cry to her, for she brings them strength to spirit and turns sorrow to wisdom, and windows of her house look outward from the walls of the world. Greatest in strength and deeds of prowess is Tulkas, who is surnamed Astaldo, the Valiant. He came last to Arda, to aid the Valar in the first battles with Melkor. His delights in wrestling and contests of strength and he rides no steed, for he can outrun all things that go on feet, and he is tireless. His hair and beard are golden, his flesh ruddy, and his weapons are his hands. He has little heed for either the past or the future, and is and is of no avail as counselor, but is a hardy friend. His spouse is Nessa, sister of Orome, and she is also lithe and fleet-footed. Deer she loves, as they follow her train whenever she goes in the wild, but she can outrun them. Swift as an arrow with the wind in her hair. In dancing she delights, and she dances in Valimar on the lawns of never-fading green. Orome is a mighty lord. If he is less strong than Tulkas, he is ever more dreadful in anger, whereas Tulkas laughs ever, in sport or in war, and even in the face of Melkor he laughed in battles before the elves were born. Orome loved the lands of Middle-earth, and he left them unwillingly and came last to Valinor, and often of old he passed back east over the mountains, and returned his host to the hills and plains. He is a hunter of monsters and fell beasts, and he delights in horses and in hounds. In all trees he loves, for which reason he is called Alderon. Alderon, and by the Cinder Tauron, the lord of the forests. Nahar is the name of his horse, white in the sun, shining silver at night. The Valroma is the name of his great horn, the sound of which is like the upgoing of the sun in scarlet, or the sheer lighting cleaving in the clouds. Above all the horns of his host, it was heard in the woods that Yavanna brought forth in the Valinar, for their Orome would train his folk and his beast for the pursuit of the evil creatures of Melkor. The spouse of Orome is Vanna, the ever-young. She is the younger sister of Yavanna, and all flowers spring as she passes and open if she glances upon them, and all birds sing at her coming. These are the names of the Valar and the Valar. Here is told in brief their likeness, such as Idar, Beldam, and Aman. But fair and noble were the forms in which they manifest to the children of Ilúvatar. They were but a veil upon their beauty and their power. And if little is here said of all that Eldar once knew, that is as nothing compared with their true being, which goes back into regions and ages far beyond our thought. Among them 9 were of chief power and reverence, but 1 is removed from their number, and 8 remained. The Aratar, the high ones of Arda, Manwë and Varda, Ulmo, Yavanna, and Alue, Manos, Nienna, and Orome. Though Manwë is their king and holds their allegiance under Eru, in majesty they are peers, surpassing beyond compare all others, whether of the Valar and the Maiar, or any of the order that Ilúvatar has set into Ea. Okay. Woo! So those are the top gods, pretty much. Manwë is in charge, but he thinks of himself, he's like the king, but he thinks of himself equal. Kind of, I guess, similar to the Greek pantheon, because you have like Zeus on top, but technically, like, you know, posture check. Okay. Of the Maiar. You ready to learn about the Maiar? I'm losing my mind, but that's okay. With the Valar came other spirits whose being also began before the world, of the same order as the Valar but of less degree. These are the Maiar, the people of the Valar, and their servants and helpers. Their number is not known to the elves, and few have names in any of the tongues of the children of Ilúvatar. For though it is otherwise in Aman, in Middle-earth, the Maiar have seldom appeared in form visible to elves and men. Chief among the Maiar of Valinor, whose names are remembered in the histories of the elder days, are Luvamere, handmaid of Varda, and Eonwë, the banner-wearer and herald of Manwë, whose might in arms is surpassed by none in Arda. But of all Maiar, Ose and Unen are best known to the children of Iluvatar. Ose is the vassal of Umo, and he is the master of the seas that wash the shores of Middle-earth. He does not go into the deeps, but loves the coasts and the isles, and rejoices in the winds of Manwë. For the storm he delights and laughs amid the roaring of the waves. His spouse Union, lady of the seas, whose hair lies spread through all waters under the sky, all creatures she loves that live in salt streams, and all weeds that grow there. To her mariners cry, for she can lay calm upon the waves, restraining the wildness of Ose. The Númenóreans lived long in her protection, and held her reverence equal to the Valar. For those who don't know, the Númenóreans, they are Aragorn's people. He is a Númenórean, that is why he lived so long. Melkor hated the sea, for he could not subdue it. It is said that in the making of Arda, he endeavored to draw Ose to his allegiance, promising him the realm and power of Ulmo, if he would serve him. So it was long ago that there arose great tumults in the sea that wrought to ruin his lands. But Union, at the prayer of Ulde, restrained Ose and brought him before Ulmo, and he was pardoned and returned to his allegiance, to which he has remained faithful, for the most part, for the delight in violence has never wholly departed from him, and at times he will rage in his willfulness without any command from Ulmo his lord. Therefore, those who dwell by the sea or go up in ships may love him, but they do not trust him. Melin was the name of the Maya who served both Vanna and Este. She dwelt long in Loren, tending the trees that flower the gardens of Urmo. Ere she came to Middle-earth. Nightingales sang about her wherever she went. Wisest of the Maiar was Alorn. He too dwelt in Loren, but his ways took him often to the house of Nienna, and after her he learned pity and patience. Of Melin much is told in the Quentus Silmarillion, but of Loren that tale does not speak. For though he loved the elves, he walked amongst them unseen or in form as one of them, and they did not know whence came the fair visions or promptings of wisdom that he put into their hearts. In later days he was a friend of all the children of Iluvatar, and took pity on their sorrows, and those who listened to him awoke from despair and put away the imaginations of darkness. Hi Lunar! I hope you enjoy. I'm reading the Silmarillion. Guys, Aloran, the wisest of the Maiar, as it says. That's Gandalf. Guys, that's Gandalf. It's Gandalf! At least I'm like 90% sure it's Gandalf. I can Google it right now. Yeah, Gandalf. Yeah, I was right. But yeah, he can take on different forms. So in this it says he has walked around as an elf, but later on, of course, he takes on the visage of an old man. Yeah, it's Gandalf. We have Gandalf. Sorry, I got it good. He is a Maiar. A Lorn. O-L-O with a R-I-N. That's how you spell it. Okay. Now, of the enemies. Last of all is set the name of Melkor, he who arises in might. But that name he has forfeited, and the Noldor, who among the elves have suffered most from his malice, will not utter it, and they name him Morgoth, the dark enemy of the world. Okay, I was right. Melkor and Morgoth are the same person. Okay, I was remembering right. Great might was given to him by Iluvatar, and he was coeval with Manwë. and powers and knowledge of all other he had part, but he turned them into evil purposes, and squandered his strength in violence and tyranny. For he coveted Arda and all that was in it, desiring the kingship of Manwë and dominion over the realms of his peers. From splendor he fell through arrogance to contempt for all things save himself, a spirit wasteful and pitiless. Understanding, he turned to subtlety and perverting his own will all that he would use, until he became a liar without shame. He began with the desire of light, but when he could not possess it for himself alone, he descended through the fire and wrath into a great burning, down into darkness. The darkness he used most in his evil works upon Arda, and filled it with fear for all living things. And for those that don't remember or didn't get it, Arda is Earth. Yet so great was the power of his uprising that in ages forgotten he contended with Manwë and all the Valar, and through long years in Arda held dominion over most of the lands of the earth. But he was not alone, for the Maiar many were drawn to his splendor in all the days of greatness, and remained in that allegiance down into his darkness, and others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valarakar, scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror. So, some of the Maiar became the Balrogs. Among those of his servants that have names of the greatest was the spirit whom Adar called Sauron, or Gorthar the Cruel. In his beginning he was of the Maiar of Alue, and he remained mighty in the lore of that people, in all the deeds of Melkor the Morgoth upon Arda, in his vast works and in the deceits of his cunning, Sauron had a part, and was only less evil than his master in that for long he served another and not himself. But in the after years he rose like a shadow of Morgoth and a ghost of his malice, and walked behind him on the same ruinous path down into the void. So, the only reason why Sauron isn't as bad as Melkor is because he was following him. He was basically like a lackey, I guess, for lack of a better term. Alright, we finally hit chapter 1, guys! The question is, should I get myself more water? You know what? I'm gonna go grab some water, and I will run an ad. Okay? So I will be right back with some water, and we'll do just a really quick ad break. Okay. Yeah, we just got to chapter 1. We got to chapter 1. We didn't even finish chapter 1. We got to chapter 1. We're on chapter 1 of the beginning of days. So yeah, let's keep going. More stuff to drink. Yeah, and sorry people on YouTube, I keep saying ad breaks, that's for Twitch only. Okay, chapter 1 of the beginning of days. It is told among the wise that the first war began before Arda was fully shaped, and ere yet there was anything that grew or walked upon the earth, and for long Melkor had the upper hand. But in the midst of the war, a spirit of great strength and hardihood came to the aid of the Valar, hearing in the far heaven that there was a battle in the little kingdom, and Arda was filled with the sound of his laughter. So came Tulkas the Strong, whose anger passes like a mighty wind, scattering cloud and darkness before it, and Melkor fled before his wrath and his laughter, and forsook Arda, and there was peace for a long time. And Tulkas remained and became one of the Valar of the kingdom of Arda, but Melkor brooded in the outer darkness, and his hate was given to Tulkas forever after. In that time the Valar brought order to the seas and lands and the mountains, and Yavanna planted the last seeds that she had long devised. And since when the fires were subdued or buried beneath the primeval hills, there was need of light. Alul, at the prayer of Yavanna, who wrought 2 mighty lamps for the lighting of Middle-earth, which he had built amid the encircling seas. Then Varda filled the lamps, and Manwë hollowed them, and the Valar set them upon high pillars, more lofty far than any mountains of the later days. One lamp they raised near to the north of Middle-earth, and it was named Uluin. And the other was raised in the south, and it was named Ormal. And the light of the lamps of the Valar flowed out over the earth, so that all was lit as if it were in a changeless day. Then the seeds that Yavanna had sown began swiftly to sprout and to burgeon, and there arose a multitude of growing things, great and small, mosses and grasses and great ferns, and trees whose tops were crowned with cloud as they were living mountains, but whose feet were wrapped in green twilight. And beasts came forth and dwelt in the grassy plains, or in the rivers and the lakes, or walked in the shadows of the woods. As yet no flower had bloomed, nor any bird had sung, for these things waited still in their time in the blossom of Yavanna. But wealth there was of her imagining, and nowhere more rich than the midmost parts of the earth, where the light of both the lamps met and blended. And there upon the isle of Almaren in the great lake was the first dwelling of the Valar, when all things were young, and new made green was yet a marvel in the eyes of the makers, and they were long content. Now it came to pass that while the Valar rested from their labors, and watched the growth unfolding of the things they had devised and begun, Manwë adorned a great feast, and the Valar and all their host came to his bidding. But Alue and Tulkas were wary, for the craft of Alue and the strength of Tulkas had been at the service of all without ceasing in the days of their labor. And Melkor knew of all that was done, for even when he had secret friends and spies among the Maiar whom he had converted to his cause, and far off into the darkness he was filled with hatred, being jealous of the work of his peers, whom he desired to make subject to himself. Therefore he gathered to himself spirits out of the halls of Ea, that he had perverted to his service, and deemed himself strong. And seeing now his time, he drew near again to Arda, and looked down upon it, and the beauty of the earth and its spring filled him with more hate. Therefore the Valar were gathered upon Almaron, fearing no evil, and because of the light of Iluin they did not perceive the shadow in the north that was cast from afar by Melkor, for he was grown dark as the night of the void. And it is sung that in that feast of the spring of Arda, Tulkas espoused Nessa, the sister of Orome, and she danced before the Valar upon the green grass of Alvarin. Then Tulkas slept, being weary and content, and Melkor deemed it that his hour had come, and he passed therefore over the walls of the night with his host, and came to Middle-earth far in the north, and the Valar were not aware of him. Now Melkor began delving and building of a vast fortress, deep under earth, beneath dark mountains wherein the beams of Illuin were cold and dim. That stronghold was named Utumno, and though the Valar knew naught of it yet, nonetheless the evil of Melkor and the blight of his hatred flowed out thence. And the spring of Arda was marred. Green things fell sick and rotted, and rivers were choked with weeds and slime, and fens were made rank and poisonous, the breeding place of flies. The forests grew dark and perilous, the haunts of fear, and beasts became monsters of horn and ivory, and dyed the earth with blood. Then the Valar knew indeed that Melkor was at work again, and they sought for his hiding place. But Melkor, trusting in the strength of Ultimuno and the might of his servants, came forth suddenly to war, and struck the first blow. Ere the Valar were prepared, and he was assailed the lights of the Luin and Ormal, and cast down their pillars and broke their lamps. And in the overthrow of the mighty pillars, lands were broken, and seas arose in tumult. And when the lamps were spilled, destroying flame was poured all over the earth, and the shape of Arda and the symmetry of its waters and its lands was now marred in that time, so that the first designs of the Valar were never after restored. In the confusion and the darkness Melkor escaped. Through fear fell upon him, for above the roaring seas he heard the voice of Manwë as a mighty wind, and the earth trembled beneath the feet of Tulkas. But he came to Ultimuno ere Tulkas could overtake him, and there he lay hid, and the Valar could not at that time overcome him, for the greater part of their strength was needed to restrain the tumults of the earth, and to save from ruin all that could be saved of their labor. And afterwards they feared to rend the earth again, until they knew where the children of Lúvatar were dwelling, who were yet to come in a time that was hidden from the Valar. Thus ended the spring of Arda. The dwelling of Valar upon Almaren was utterly destroyed, and they had no abiding place upon the face of the earth. Therefore they departed from Middle-earth and went to the land of Aman, the westernmost of all lands upon the borders of the sea. For its west shores looked upon the outer sea, and that is called by the elves Ekaya, encircling the king of Arda. How wide is that sea none know but the Valar, and beyond it are the walls of the night. By east shores of Aman were the uttermost end of Belagar, the great sea of the west. And since Melkor returned to Middle-earth, and they could not yet overcome him, the Valar forfeited their dwelling, and upon the shores of the sea they raised the Pelori, the mountains of Aman, highest upon the earth. And above all mountains of the Pelori was that height upon those summit Manwë set his throne. Taniquetil, the elves named the holy mountain, and Oyolose, everlasting whiteness. Alaria, crowned with stars, and many names beside, but the Sindar spoke of it in their later tongue as Amon Ulos. From their halls upon Tanquelti, Manwë, and Varda could look out across the earth even unto the farthest east. Behind the walls of the Pelori, the Valar established their domain in that region which is called Valinor, and there were their houses, their gardens, and their towers. In that garden land the Valar gathered a great store of light, and in the fairest things that were saved from the ruin, and many others yet fairer they made anew. And Valinor became more beautiful than even Middle-earth in the spring of Arda, and it was blessed, for the deathless dwelt there, and there not faded nor withered, neither was there any stain upon flower or leaf in the land, nor any corruption or sickness in anything that lived, for the very stones and waters were hallowed. Okay, gotta take a drink. And when Valinor was full wrought, and the mansions of the Valar were established, in the midst of the plain beyond the mountains they built their city, Valimar of many bells. Before its western gate there was a green mound, as as Elohar, that is also named also Corolare, and Yavanna hollowed it. And she sat there long upon the green grass and sang a song of power, in which was set all her thought of things that grow on earth. But Nienna thought in silence, and watered the mold with tears. In the time the Valar were gathered together to hear the song of Yavanna, they sat upon their thrones on the council in the Mahanaxar, the ring of doom near the golden gates of Valamar. And Yavanna Commentari sang before them, and they watched. And as they watched, upon the mound there came forth 2 slender shoots, and silence was all over the world in that hour, nor was there any sound save the chanting of Yavanna. Under her song the saplings grew, and became fair and tall, and came to flower, and thus there awoke in the world 2 trees of Valinor. Of all things which Yavanna made, they had the most renowned, and about their fate all the tales of elder days are woven. The one had leaves of dark green, and beneath were as shining silver, and from each of his countless flowers a dew of silver light was ever falling, and the earth beneath was dappled with the shadows of his fluttering leaves. The other bore leaves of a young green, like the new open beech. Their edges were of glittering gold. Flowers swung upon her branches in clusters of yellow flame, formed each to a glowing horn that spilled a golden rain upon the ground, and from the blossom of that tree there came forth a warmth and great light. Telperion, the one who was called in Valinor, and Cipilion, and Ninqualate, and many other names, but Larlin the other was, and Malinlada, and Clurian, and many names in song beside. I feel like Tolkien was like, hey, how many vowels can I fit into a fucking name? Bruh! Bruh! Okay, I got this. I got this. In 7 hours, the glory of each tree waxed to full and waned again to naught, and each awoke once more to life an hour before the other ceased to shine. Thus, in Valinor, twice every day there came a gentle hour of softer light, when both trees were faint and their gold and silver beams mingled. Telperion was the elder of the trees, and came first to full stature and bloom. In that first hour in which he shone, the white glimmer of a silver dawn, the Valar reckoned not unto the tale of hours, but named it the opening hour, and counted it from the ages of their reign in Valinor. Therefore, at the 6th hour of the first day, and of all the joyful days thereafter, until the darkening of Valinor, Telperion ceased his time of flower, and at the 12th hour, Laurelin her blossoming. And each day of the Valar and Aman contained 12 hours, and ended with the second mingling of the lights, in which Laurelin was waning, but Telperion was waxing. But the light that was spilled from the trees endured long, ere it was taken up into the airs or sank down into the earth, and the dews of Telperion and the rain that fell from Lauren Varda hoarded in great vats like shining lakes, that were to all the land of Valar as the wells of water and light. And thus began the days of the bliss of Valinor, and thus also began the count of time. Okay, so I think these 2 trees are the sun and the moon. Shadow! I don't think it counts. I don't think I've hit the hour and a half. I appreciate, but I don't think I hit the hour and a half because I had to walk the dog and I chatted for a bit before. But I do think, okay, so these 2 trees, I think they are the sun and the moon, with the golden light and the silver light, and that they're like 12 hours-ish each, the waxing and the waning. And when their lights mingled, it was dawn and dusk, I think, or something similar. Yeah, but you're gonna get there, really bet an hour originally. Yeah, but I haven't hit my hour and a half yet. Okay, let's go. But as the ages drew on, the hour appointed by Iluvatar for the coming of the firstborn, Middle-earth lay in a twilight beneath the stars that Varda had wrought in the ages forgotten of her labors in Ea, and in the darkness Melkor dwelt. and still often walked abroad, in many shapes of power and fear, and he welded cold and fire, from the tops of the mountains to the deep furnaces that are beneath them, and whatsoever was cruel or violent or deadly in those days, as is laid to his charge. From the beauty and bliss of Valinor and Valar came seldom over the mountains of Middle-earth, but gave to the land beyond Pelori their care and their love. And in the midst of the blessed realm were missions of Elul, and there he labored long. For in the making of all things in that land he had the chief part, and he wrought there many beautiful shapely works, both openly and in secret. Of him comes the lore and knowledge of the earth and of all things that it contains. Whether the lore of those things that make not, but seek only for the understanding of what is, or the lore of all craftsmen, the weaver, the shaper of wood, and the worker in metals, and the tiller and husbandman also. Though these last and all that deal with these things that grow and bear fruit must also look also to the spouse of Elul, Yavanna Kimentari. Elul it is who named the friend of the Noldor. For him they learned of much in after days, and they are most skilled of the elves. And in their own fashion, according to the gifts which Iluvatar gave them, they added much to his teachings, delighting in tongues and in scripts, and in the figures of broidery, of drawing, and of carving. The Noldor also it was who first achieved the making of gems, and the fairest of all gems were the Silmarillion, and they are lost. But Manwë Sulimo, highest and holiest of the Valar, sat upon the borders of Aman, forsaking not in his thought of the outer lands, for his throne was set in majesty upon the pinnacle of Taniquetelli, the highest of the mountains of the world, standing upon the margin of the sea. Spirits in the shape of hawks and eagles flew ever to and from his halls, and their eyes could see to the depths of the seas, and pierce the hidden caverns beneath the world. Thus they brought word to him of well nigh in all that passed in Arda, yet some things were hidden even from the eyes of Manwë and the servants of Manwë. For where Melkor sat in his dark thought, impenetrable shadows lay. Manwë has no thought for his own honor, and is not jealous of his power, but rules all to peace. The Vanara he loved best of all the elves, and of him they received song and poetry, for poetry is the delight of Manwë, and the song of words in his music. His raiment is blue, and blue is the fire of his eyes, and his scepter is of sapphire, which the Noldor wrought for him. And he was appointed to be the vicegerent of Iluvatar, king of the world of Valar and the elves, and of men, and the chief defense against the evil of Melkor. With Manwë dealt Varda the most beautiful, she who in the Sindarian tongue is named Elibreth, queen of the Valar, maker of the stars, and with them were a great host of spirit and blessedness. But Ulma was alone, and he abode not in Valinor, nor ever came thither unless there was need of a great council. He dwelt from the beginning of Arda in the outer ocean, and still dwells there. Thence he governs the flowing of all waters, and the ebbing and the courses of all rivers, and the replenishment of springs, the distilling of all dews and rain in every land beneath the sky. In the deep places he gives thought to music and great and terrible, and the echo of that music runs through all the veins of the world in sorrow and in joy. For if joyful is the fountain that rises in the sun, its springs are in the wells of sorrow unfathomed at the fountains of the earth. The Telari learn much of Ulmo, and for this reason their music has both sadness and enchantment. Salmar come with him to Arda, he who made the horns of Ulmo, that none may ever forget who once has heard them, and Ulsay and Union, who also whom he gave the government of the waves and the movements of the inner seas, and many other spirits besides. And thus it was by the power of Ulmo that even under the darkness of Melkor life coursed still through many secret loads, and the earth did not die. And to all who were lost in the darkness or wandered far from the light of Valar, the ear of Ulmo was ever open, nor has he ever forsaken Middle-earth. And whatsoever may since have befallen of ruin or of change, he has not ceased to take thought for it, and will not until the end of days. And in that time of dark, Yavanna, who also was unwilling utterly to forsake the outer lands, for all things that grow are dear to her, and she mourned for the works that she had begun in Middle-earth, but Melkor had marred. Therefore, leaving the house of Lue and the flowering meads of Volinar, she would come at times and heal the hurts of Melkor. In returning, she would ever urge the Valar to that war with his evil dominion that they must surely wage ere the coming of the firstborn. And Orome, tamer of beasts, would ride to whiles in the darkness of unlit forest. As a mighty hunter, he came with spear and bow, pursuing to the death of monsters and fell creatures of the kingdom of Melkor. And his white horse Nahar shone like silver in the shadows. And then the sleeping earth trembled at the beat of his golden hooves. In the twilight of the world, Orome would sound the Valaroma, his great horn, upon the plains of Arda, whereat the mountains echoed and the shadows of evil fled away, and Melkor himself quailed in Ultimonal, foreboding the wrath to come. But even as Orome passed, the servants of Melkor would gather again, and the lands were filled with shadows and deceit. Okay. Now all is said concerning the matter of the earth and its rulers in the beginning of days, and ere the world became such as the children of Ilúvatar have known it. For elves and men are children of Ilúvatar. And since they understood not fully that theme by which the children entered into the music, none of the Aenir dared to add anything to their fashion, which the reason the Valar are to the kindreds rather their elders and their chieftains than their masters. And if ever in their dwellings with elves and men the Aenir have endeavored to force them when they would not be guided, seldom has this turned good, howsoever good intent. The dealings of the Aenir have indeed mostly been with the elves, for Ilúvatar made them more like in nature to the Aenir, though less in the might and stature, whereas to men he gave strange gifts. For it is said that after the departure of the Valar there was silence, and for an age Ilúvatar sat alone and thought, and he spoke and said, Behold, I love the earth, which shall be a mansion for the Quendi and the Etani. But the Quendi shall be the fairest of all earthly creatures, and they shall have and shall conceive and bring forth more beauty than all of my children, and they shall have greater bliss in this world. But to the Etani I will give a new gift. Therefore he willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world and should find no rest therein, but they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world, and beyond the music of Aenir, which is a fate to all things else. And of their operation everything should be, in form and deed, completed, and the world filled unto the last and smallest. But Ilúvatar knew that men, being set amid the turmoils of the powers of the world, would stray often, and want not use their gifts in harmony. And he said, These two, in their time, shall find that all that they do redounds at the end only to the glory of my work. And yet the elves believe that men are often grief to Manwë, who knows most of the mind of Ilúvatar, for it seems to the elves that men resemble Melkor most of all in Aenir, although he has never feared and hated them, even those that served him. It is one with this gift of freedom that the children of men dwell only in a short space in the world alive, and are not bound to it, and depart soon whither the elves know not, whereas the elves remained until the end of days, and their love of the earth and all of the world is more single and more poignant, therefore, and as the years lengthen ever more sorrowful. For the elves die not till the world dies, unless they are slain or waste in grief, and to both these seeming deaths they are subject. Neither does age subdue their strength, unless one grow weary of 10,000 centuries, and dying they are gathered to the halls of Mandos and Valinor, which they may in time return. But the sons of men die indeed, and leave the world, wherefore they are called the guests or the strangers. Death is their fate, the gift of Ilúvatar, which as time wears even the powers shall envy. But Melkor has cast a shadow upon it, and confounded it with darkness, and brought forth evil out of good, and fear out of hope. And yet of old the Valar have declared to the elves in Valinor that men shall join in the second music of Anur, whereas Iluvatar has not revealed what he proposes for the elves after the world's end, and Melkor has not discovered it. So the elves can pretty much live forever unless they are killed or wither away from sadness. But men have been given the ability to die of like old age, but Melkor corrupted it to make it seem as though it was a bad thing and not something to make them, I guess, enjoy life and the beauty of it. That's my interpretation of that. We're to chapter 2. Book. Do you guys like the sound of the book? Okay. Alright, chapter 2 of Alul and Yavanna. How long can I go before I lose my voice? That's the real question. ASMR go burr. It is, I guess that's technically ASMR. Fuck. Chapter 2. It is told that in their beginning the dwarves were made by Alul in the darkness of Middle-earth, for so greatly did Alul desire the coming of the children, to have learners to whom which he could teach his lore and his crafts, that he was unwilling to await the fulfillment and designs of Iluvatar. And Alul made the dwarves, even as they still are, because the forms of the children who were to come were unclear in his mind, and because the power of Melkor was yet over the earth, and he wished therefore that they should be strong and unyielding. But fearing that the other Valar might blame his work, he wrought in secret, and made first the 7 fathers of the dwarves in the hall under the mountains in Middle-earth. Yo, some stuff is like clicking in my head, so 7 fathers of the dwarves. Is that why the dwarves got 7 rings? When Sauron was like doing the whole rings of power? And then there was like 9 of the Valar. I wonder if that was supposed to mimic, because the 9 rings went to the men. I wonder if that was supposed to mirror the Valar. I'm using Blaine, and it hurts. Okay, sorry. Now Iluvatar knew what was done, and in the very hour that Alul's work was complete, and he was pleased, and began to instruct the dwarves in the speech that he had devised for them. Iluvatar spoke to him, and Alul heard his voice and was silent. And the voice of Iluvatar said to him, Why hast thou done this? Why dost thou attempt the thing which thou knowest is beyond thy power and thy authority? For thou hast from me as a gift thy own being only, and no more, and therefore the creatures of thy hand and mind can only live by that being, moving when thou thinkest to move them, and if thy thought be elsewhere, standing idle, is that thy desire? Then Alul answered, I did not desire such lordship. I desired things other than I am, to love and to teach them, so that they too might perceive the beauty of Ea, which thou hast caused to be. For it seemed to me that there is great room in Arda for many things that might rejoice in it, yet is for the most part empty still, and dumb. And in my impatience I have fallen into folly. Yet the making of things is in my heart from my own making by thee. And the child of little understanding that makes a play of the deeds of his father may do so without the thought of mockery, but because he is the son of his father. But what shall I do now, so as thou not be angry with me forever? As a child to his father, I offer to these things the work of these hands which thou hast made. Do with them what thou wilt, but should I not rather destroy the works of my presumption? Then Alul took up a great hammer to smite the dwarves, and he wept. But Iluvatar had compassion upon Alul and his desire, because of his humility, and the dwarves shrank from the hammer and were afraid, and they bowed down their heads and begged for mercy. And the voice of Iluvatar said to Alul, Thy offer I accepted even as it was made. Dost thou not see that these things now have a life of their own, and speak with their own voices? Else they would have not flinched from thy blow, nor from any command of thy will. Then Elul cast down his hammer and was glad, and he gave thanks to Iluvatar, saying, May Eru bless my work and amend it. But Iluvatar spoke again and said, Even as I gave being to the thoughts of the Anur at the beginning of the world, so now have I taken up thy desire and given it a place therein, but in no other way will I amend thy handiwork, and as thou hast made it, so shall it be. But I will not suffer this, and these should come before the firstborn of my design, nor that thy impatience should be rewarded. They shall sleep now in the darkness under stone, and shall not come forth until the firstborn have wakened upon the earth, and until that time they shall wait, though long it seem. But when the time comes, I will awaken them, and they shall be to thee as children, and often strife and shall arise between thine and mine, the children of my adoption, and the children of my choice. Then Elul took the 7 fathers of the dwarves, and laid them to rest in far sundered places, and he returned to Valinor, and waited while the long years lengthened. So basically, Iluvatar was like, hey yo, you made something? I'm proud of you. I'm annoyed with you. I'm proud of you. But it's gotta sleep until my shit's ready. And there's a fair chance that your shit and my shit's gonna hate each other. That's at least how I'm interpreting that. Because he created the dwarves. Not out of like the dark like Melkor was doing, but because he was like, I just want to teach something things. I want to teach them. I make things. I want to teach people how to make things. Okay. Since they were to come in the days of the power of Melkor, Elul made the dwarves strong to endure. Therefore, they are stone-hard, stubborn, fast in friendship and in enmity, and they suffer toil and hunger and hurt of body more heartily than all other speaking peoples. And they live long, far beyond the span of men, yet not forever. Aforetime it was held among the elves in Middle-earth that dying the dwarves returned to the earth and the stone of which they were made, and yet that is not their own belief. For they say Elul the Maker, whom they call Mal, cares for them, and gathers them to Mandos in the halls set apart, and that he declared to their fathers of old that Iluvatar will hallow them, and give them a place among the children in the end. And then their part shall be to serve Elul and to aid him in the remaking of Arda after the last battle. They say also the 7 fathers of the dwarves return to live again in their own kin, and to bear once more their ancient names, of whom Durin was the most renowned in after ages, father of that kindred most friendly to the elves, whose mansions were at Khazad-dûm. Oh, Durin! Okay. Now, when Elul labored in the making of the dwarves, he kept his work hidden from the other Valar. But at last he opened his mind to Yavanna and told her of all that had come to pass. And Yavanna said to him, Eru is merciful. Now I see that thy heart rejoiceth, as indeed it may, for thou hast received not only forgiveness but bounty. Yet because thou hidst his thought from me until this achievement, thy children will have little love for things of my love. They will love first the things made by their hands, as doth their father. They will delve in the earth, and the things that grow and live upon the earth they will not heed. Many a tree shall feel the bite of their iron without pity. Elul answered, Thou shalt also be true of the children of Iluvatar, for they will eat and they will build. And though the things of thy realm have worth in themselves, and would have worth if no children were to come, yet Eru will give them dominion, and they shall use all that they find in Arda, though not by the purpose of Eru, without respect or without gratitude. Not unless Melkor darkened their hearts, said Yavanna, and she was not appeased, but grieved in heart, fearing what might be done upon Middle Earth in days to come. Therefore she went before Manwë, and she did not betray the counsel of Elul, but she said, King of Arda, is it true, As Elul hath said to me, that the children, when they come, shall have dominion over all the things of my labor, to do with as they will therewith. It is true, said Manwë, but why dost thou ask? For thou hadst no need of teaching of Elul. Then Yavanna was silent and looked into her own thought, and she answered, Because my heart is anxious, thinking of the days to come. All my works are dear to me, and it is not enough that Melkor should have marred so many. Shall nothing I have devised be free from the dominion of others? If thou hast thy will, wouldst thou reserve, said Manwë, of thy realm, what dost thou hold dearest? All have their worth, said Yavanna, and each contributes to the worth of others, but the Kelvar can flee or defend themselves, whereof the Olavar that grow cannot. And among these I hold trees dear. Long in the growing, swift shall they be in felling, and unless they pay toll with fruit upon the little mound in their passing, so I see in my thought. Would that the trees might speak on behalf of all things that have root, and punish those that wrong them. It is a strange thought, said Manwë. Yet it was in the song, said Yavanna. For while thou wert in heavens with Ulmo, built the clouds and poured out the rains, I lifted up the branches of great trees to receive them, and some sang to Ilúvatar amid the wind and rain. Then Manwë sat silent, and the thought of Yavanna that she had put into his heart grew and unfolded, and it was beheld by Ilúvatar, and it seemed to Manwë that the song rose once more about him, and he heeded now many things therein, though that he had heard from them that he had not heeded before. And at last the vision was renewed, but it was not now remote, for he was himself within it, and yet he saw all that was upheld by the hand of Ilúvatar, and the hand entered in, and from it came forth many wonders that had until then been hidden from him by the hearts of the Aenir. Then Manwë awoke, and he went down to Yavanna upon Elohar, and he sat beside her beneath the two trees, and Manwë said, O Kementari, Eru hath spoke, saying, Do then any of the Valar suppose that I did not hear all the song, even the least sound of the least voice? Behold, when the children awake, then the thought of Yavanna will awake also, and it will summon spirits from afar, and they will go among the Kelvar and the Ovlar, and some will dwell therein, and be held in reverence, and their just anger shall be feared, for a time, while the firstborn are in their power, and while the secondborn are still young. But dost thou not now remember, Kementari, that thy thoughts sang not always alone, that did not thy thought and mine meet also, so that we took wing together like great birds that soar above the clouds. That also shall come to be by the head of Ilúvatar, and before the children awake, there shall go forth with wings, like the wind, the eagles, the lords of the west. Then Yavanna was glad, and she stood up, reaching her arms towards the heavens, and she said, High shall climb the trees of Kementari, that the eagles of the king may house therein. But Manwë rose also, and it seemed he stood to such a height that his voice came down to Yavanna as from the pass of the winds. Nay, he said, only the trees of Elul will be tall enough, and the mountains the eagles shall house, and hear the voices of those who call upon us, and the forest shall walk the shepherds of the trees. Then Manwë and Yavanna parted for that time, and Yavanna returned to Elul, and he said in his smithy, pouring molten metal in the mold, Eru is bountiful, she said. Now let thy children beware, for there shall walk power in the forest whose wrath will arouse at their peril. Nonetheless, they will have need of wood, said Elul, and he went on with his smith work. Okay, so Elul made the dwarves, and then Yavanna realized that they would prefer themselves and their crafting over her creations of like nature and forests and trees. So she basically went to Manwë, asked for help, and then they realized that some of the trees would awake. That's the Ents. The shepherds of the trees are the Ents. So that's the first mention of the Ents in this. But they will awaken when the don't know if it's the first or second awakening that they'll wake, but they will awaken. The trees shall awaken. The Ents. We're on to chapter 3 already! Chapter 3! Of the coming of elves and the captivity of Melkor. Guys, we're to chapter 3 of the frickin' Silmarillion. Silmarillion? The question is, how long can I go before voice is gone? Because I feel like it's already been going in and out. How about we try to do one more chapter and then we'll call it a night? I feel like that's fair. Alright guys, chapter 3. Through long ages, the Valar dealt in bliss in the light of the trees beyond the mountains of Aman, but all Middle-earth lay in twilight under the stars. While the lamps had shone, growth began where there now was checked, because all was dark again. But already the oldest living things had arisen. In the seas the great weeds, and on the earth the shadow of great trees. And in the valleys of the night-clad hills there were dark creatures, old and strong. To those lands and forests the Valar seldom came, save only Yavanna and Orome. And Yavanna would walk there in shadows, grieving because the growth and promise of spring of Arda was stayed, and she sat asleep upon many things that had arisen in the spring, so they should not age, but should wait for a time of awakening that should yet be. But in the north Melkor built his strength, and he slept not, but watched and labored, and the evil things that he had perverted walked abroad, and the dark and slumbering woods were haunted by monsters and shapes of dread. And in Ultimono, what was that, dog? I'm reading. He gathered his demons about him, those spirits who first adhered to him in the days of his splendor, and became most like him in his corruption. Their hearts were of fire, but they were cloaked in darkness, and terror went before them. They had whips of flame. Balrogs they were named in Middle-earth in later days. And in the dark time Melkor bred many other monsters of divers shapes and kinds that long troubled the world, and his realm spread ever southward towards Middle-earth. And Melkor made a fortress and armory not far from the northwestern shores of the sea, to resist any assault that might come from Aman. That stronghold was commanded by Sauron, lieutenant of Melkor, and was named Angband. It came to pass the Valar held council, for they became troubled by the tidings that Yavanna and Orome brought from the outer lands, and Yavanna spoke before the Valar, saying, Ye mighty of Arda, the vision of Ilúvatar was brief and soon taken away, so that maybe we cannot guess within the narrow count of days the hour appointed. Yet be sure of this, the hour approaches, and within this age our hope shall be revealed, and the children shall wake. Shall we then leave the lands of their dwellings desolate and full of evil? Shall they walk in darkness while we have light? Shall they call Melkor Lord while Manwë sits upon Tanquetil? Tulkas cried, Nay, let us make war swiftly. We have not rested from strife over long. Is not our strength now renewed? Shall one alone contest with us forever? But at the bidding of Manwë, Mando spoke, and he said, In this age the children of Ilúvatar shall come indeed, but they have not come yet. Moreover, it is doomed that the firstborn shall come into the darkness, and shall look first upon the stars. Great light shall be for their wanting. To Varda ever shall they call a need. Then Varda went forth from the council, and she looked out from the height of Tanquetil, and beheld the darkness of Middle-earth beneath the innumerable stars, faint and far. Then she began a great labor, greatest of all the works of the Valar since their coming into Arda. She took the silver dews from the vats of Telperion, and therewith she made new stars, and brighter against the coming of the firstborn. Wherefore she, whose name out of the deeps of time and the labors of Ea was Tintale, the kindler, she was called by many after the elves, Elentari, Queen of the Stars, Carnil and Lunil, Nenar and Lumbar, Alcar. Oh god, names. Al Erin Ken, K. Alicaranque, and Elamare she wrought in that time, and many other of the ancient stars she gathered together, and set as signs in the heavens of Ardo, Wilwarin, Telmendil, Solnon, Soron, and Anarhima, and Menel Markar with his shining bell that forebodes the last battle that shall be at the end of days. And high in the north, as a challenge to Melkor, she set the crown of 7 mighty stars to swing, Valserca, the sickle of Valar, and the sign of doom. It is told that even as Varda ended her labors, and they were long, when first Melkamar stood up to the sky, and the blue fire of Helun flickered the mists above the borders of the world, in that hour of the children of the earth awoke, the firstborn of Iluvatar, by the starlit mare of Cuvienen, water of awakening. They arose from the sleep of Iluvatar, and while they dwelt yet silent by Luvin, in their eyes beheld the first of all things, the stars of heaven. Therefore they have ever loved the starlight, and have revered Varda Elentari above all Valar. Names are gonna kill me. And I am butchering them. I'm so sorry. If you know how to pronounce these. I apologize. In the changes of the world, the shapes of lands and seas have been broken and remade. Rivers have not kept their courses, neither have the mountains remained steadfast. And to the Cuvinen, there is no returning. But it is said among the elves that it lay far off the east of Middle-earth and northward, and it is bay in the inland sea of Helkar, and that sea stood there aforetime the roots of the mountain of Alun had been before Melkor overthrew it. Many waters flowed down thither from the heights of the east, and the first sound that was heard by the elves was the sound of water flowing, and the sound of water falling over stone. Long they dwelt in their first home by the water under the stars, and they walked the earth in wonder, and they began to make speech, and to give names to all things that they perceived. Themselves they named Quendi, signifying those that speak with voices, for as yet they had met no other living things that spoke or sang. And on a time it chanced that Orome rode eastward in his hunting, and he turned north by the shores of Helkar and passed under the shadows of Orokarni, the mountains of the east. Then on a sudden Nahir set up a great neighing and stood still. Orome wandered and sat silent, and it seemed to him that in the quiet of the land and under the stars he heard afar off many voices singing. Thus it was the Valar found at last, as it were by chance, those whom they had so long awaited, and Orome, looking upon the elves, was filled with wonder, as though they were beings sudden and marvelous and unforeseen. For so it shall ever be with Valar, from without the world, though all things may be forethought in music or foreshown in vision from afar, to those who enter verily into Ea, each in its time shall be met unawares as something new and unforetold. In the beginning, the elder children of Iluvatar were stronger and greater than they have since become, but not more fair, though the beauty of the Quendi in the days of their youth was beyond all other beauty that Iluvatar has cause to be. It has not perished, but lives in the west, and sorrow and wisdom have enriched it. And Orome loved the Quendi, and named them in their own tongue Eldar, the people of the stars, but that name was after born only those who followed him upon the westward road. Yet many of the Quendi were filled with dread at his coming, and this was the doing of Melkor. For by after knowledge, the wise declare that Melkor, ever watchful, was the first aware of the awakening of the Quendi, and set shadows and evil spirits to spy upon them and waylay them. So it came to pass, some years ere coming of Orome, that if any of the elves strayed far abroad, none or few together, they would often vanish and never return. And the Quendi said that the hunter had caught them, and they were afraid. And indeed, the most ancient songs of the elves, of which echoes are remembered still in the west, tell of the shadow shapes that walked in the hills above Cuvianen, or would pass suddenly over the stars, and of the dark rider upon his wild horse that pursued those that wandered to take them and devour them. Now Melkor greatly hated and feared the riding of Orome, and either he sent indeed his dark servants as riders, or he set lying whispers abroad, for the purpose that the Quendi should shun Orome if they ever should meet. Thus it was that when Nahar neighed, and Orome indeed came among them, some of the Quendi hid themselves, and some fled and were lost. But those that had courage and stayed perceived swiftly that the great rider was no shape out of darkness, for the light of Amon was in his face, and all the noblest of elves were drawn towards it. But of those unhappy ones who were ensnared by Melkor, little is known of certainty. For who of the living has descended into the pits of Utumano, or has explored the darkness of the councils of Melkor? Yet this is held true by the wise of Eressa, that all of those with Quendi who came into the hands of Melkor ere Utumano was broken, were put there in prison, and by the slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved, and thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the orcs in envy and mockery of the elves, of whom they were afterwards the bitterest of foes. For the orcs had life and multiplied after the manner of the children of Iluvatar, and naught that had life of its own, nor the semblance of life. And could ever Melkor make, since his rebellion in Lindale before the beginning, or so say the wise. And deep in their dog hearts the orcs loathed the master whom they served in fear, the maker only of their misery. And this, it may be, was the vilest deed of Melkor, and the most hateful of Iluvatar. So Melkor corrupted some of the early elves and transformed them into the orcs. That's sad. Orome tarried a while among the Quendi, and then swiftly he rode back over the land and sea to Valinor, and brought the tidings to Valimar. And he spoke of the shadows that troubled Cuvianen, and then the Valar rejoiced, and yet they were in doubt amid their joy. And they debated long what counsel it were best to take forth the guarding of the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor. But Orome returned at once to Middle-earth and abode with the elves. Manwë sat long in the thought of tranquility, and he sought the counsel of Iluvatar. And coming down then to Valimar, he summoned the Valar to the Ring of Doom, and thither came even Ulmo from the outer sea. Then Manwë said to Valar, "This is the counsel of Iluvatar in my heart, that we should take up again the mastery of Arda, and at whatever cost, and deliver the Quendi from the shadow of Melkor." Then Tulkas was glad, but Elul was grieved, foreboding the hurts of the world that must come of that strife. But the Valar made ready and came forth from Amon in the strength of war, resolving to assault the fortresses of Melkor to make an end. Never did Melkor forget this war was made for the sake of the elves, and that they were the cause of his downfall. Yet they had no part in those deeds, and they know little of the riding of the might of the west against the north in the beginning of their days. Melkor met the onset of the Valar in the northwest of Middle-earth, and all that region was much broken. But the first victory of the hosts of the west was swift, and the servants of Melkor fled before them to Ultimono. Then Valar passed over Middle-earth, and they set a guard over Cuvianen. Thereafter the Quendi knew nothing of the great battle of the powers, save that the earth shook and groaned beneath them, and the waters were moved, and in the north there were lights of mighty fires. Long and grievous was the siege of Ultimono. Many battles were fought before its gates, which naught but the rumor is known to the elves. In that time, the shape of Middle-earth was changed, and the great sea that sundered from it Aman grew wide and deep, and it broke in upon the coasts and made a deep gulf to the southward. Many lesser bays were made between the great gulf and Hecate far in the north, where Middle-earth and Aman came nigh together. Of these, the bays of Valar was the chief, and into it the mighty river Silmarillion flowed down from the new raised highlands northwards. Dorthonion, the mountains of Hithlum, the lands of far north were all made desolate in those days, for there were Ultumino was delved exceedingly deep. Its pits were filled with fires and great hosts of the servants of Melkor. But at last the gates of Ultumino were broken and the halls unroofed, and Melkor took refuge in the uttermost pit. Then Tolkis stood forth, the champion of the Valar, and wrestled with him, and cast him upon his face. Cast him upon his face? Oh. And he was bound with the chain of Aginor that Elul had wrought, and led captive, and the world had peace for a long age. Nonetheless, the Valar did not discover all the mighty vaults and caverns hidden with deceit far under the fortress of Angband and Ultumino. Many evil things still lingered there, and others were dispersed and fled into the dark and roamed in the waste places of the world, awaiting a more evil hour. In Sauron they did not find. But when the battle was ended and from the ruin of the north great clouds arose and hid the stars, the Valar drew Melkor back to Valinor, bound hand and foot and blindfolded, and he was brought to the Ring of Doom. There he lay upon his face before the feet of Manwë and sued for pardon, but his prayer was denied. And he was cast into prison with the fastness of Mandos, whence none can escape. Neither Vala, nor elf, nor mortal man. Vast and strong are those halls, and they were built in the west in the land of Aman. There was Melkor doomed to abide by for 3 ages long before his cause should be tried anew, or should he plead again for pardon. Then again the Valar were gathered in council, and they were divided in debate. For some, and of those Ulmo was the chief, held that the Quendi should be left free to walk as they would in Middle-earth, and with their gifts of skill to order all the lands and heal their hurts. But the most part feared for the Quendi in the dangerous world amid the deceits of the starlit dusk, and they were filled moreover with the love and the beauty of the elves, and desired for their fellowship. At last, therefore, the Valar summoned the Quendi to Valinor, there to be gathered at the knees of the powers in the light of the trees forever. And Mandos broke his silence, saying, "So it is doomed." And from his summons came many woes afterwards befell. But the elves were at first unwilling to hearken to the summons, for they had yet seen the Valar only in their wrath as they went to war, same for Orome alone, and they were filled with dread. Therefore Orome was sent again to them, and he chose from among them as ambassadors who should go to Valinor and speak for their people. And these were Ingwe, Finwë, and Elwë, who afterwards were kings. Coming, they were filled with awe by the glory and majesty of the Valar, and they desired greatly in the light and splendor of the trees. Then Orome brought them back to Culvianan, and they spoke before their people, and counseled them to heed the summons of Valar and remove into the west. Then befell the first sundering of the elves, for the kindred of Ingwe and the most part of the kindreds of Finwë and Elwë were swayed by the words of their lords, and were willing to depart and follow Orome. And these were known ever after as the Eladar, by the name that Orome gave to the elves in the beginning, in their own tongue. But many refused the summons, preferring the starlight and the wide spaces of Middle-earth to the rumor of the trees. And these are the Ivari, the unwilling, and they are sundered in that time from the Eldar, and met never again until many ages were past. The Eldar prepared now a great march from their first homes in the east, and they were arrayed in 3 hosts. The smallest host and the first host to set forth was led by Ingwe, the most high lord in all the elvish race. He entered into Valinor and sits at the feet of the powers, and all elves revere his name. But he came never back, nor looked again upon Middle-earth. And the Vanyar were his people. They are the fair elves, the beloved of Manwë and Varda, and few among men have spoken with them. Next came the Noldor, a name of wisdom, the people of Finwë, and they are the deep elves, the friends of Ulu, and they are renowned in song, for they fought and labored long grievously in the northern lands of old. The greatest host came last. They are named the Talari, and they are tarried on the road, and were not wholly of a mind to pass from dusk to the light of Eleanor. In the winter they had great delight, and those that came at last to the western shores were enamored of the sea. The sea elves, therefore, they became in the land of Aman. The Falmari, for they had made music beside the breaking waves. The two lords they had, for their numbers were great. Elwë Singolo, which signifies grey mantle, and Olwë his brother. These were the three kindreds of the Ellidae, who, passing at the length into the uttermost west in the days of the trees, are called Calquendali, elves of the light. But others of the Eldar there were to set indeed upon the westward march, but became lost upon the long road, or turned aside, or lingered in the shores of Middle-earth, and these were for the most part of the kindred of the Telari, as is told hereafter, and they dwelt by the sea, or wandered in the woods and the mountains of the west, yet their hearts were turned towards the west. Those elves the Calaquendi call the Ulamanyar, since they never came to the land of Aman and the blessed realm, but Umanyar and the Avari, but the Umar and the Avari, unlike they call the Moriquendi, elves of the darkness, for they never beheld the light that was before the sun and moon. Oh. It is told that when the hosts of Eladale departed from Kulvianen, Orome rode at their head upon Nahar. His white horse shod with gold, and passing northward about the Sea of Helkar as they turned towards the west. Before them great clouds hung still black in the north above the ruins of war, and the stars in that region were hidden. Then not a few grew afraid and repented, and turned back, and are forgotten. Long and slow was the march of the Eldar into the west, for the leagues of Middle-earth were uncounted, weary, and pathless, nor did the Eldar desire to hasten, for they were filled with wonder at what they saw, and by many lands and rivers they wished to abide. And though they were all willing to wander, many feared rather their journey's end than hope for it. Therefore, whenever Orome departed, having at times other matters to heed, they halted and went forward no more, until he returned to guide them. And it came to pass that after many years of journeying in this manner, that the Eldar took their course through a forest, and they came to a great river, wider than any that they had seen yet. And beyond it were mountains whose sharp horns seemed to pierce the realm of the stars. This river, it is said, was even greater, which was even the river which was after called Anduin the Great, and was ever the frontier of the west lands of Middle-earth. But upon the mountains were the Hithagar, the towers of mist upon the borders of Eredor, yet they were taller and more terrible in those days, and they were reared by Melkor to hinder the riding of Orome. Now the Teldori abode long on the east bank of the river, and wished to remain there. But the Vanar and the Noldor passed over it, and Orome led them into the passes of the mountains. And when Orome was gone forward, the Telari looked upon the shadowy heights and were afraid. Then one arose in the host of Olwë, which is ever the hindmost on the road. Lenwë he was called, for he forsook the westward march and led away numerous people southwards down the great river, and they passed about the knowledge of their kin until long years were past. Those were the Nandor, and became the people apart, unlike their kin, save that they loved water, and dwelt most beside falls and running streams. Greater knowledge they had of living things, tree and herb, bird and beast, than all other elves. And after years Denethor, son of Lenwë, turned again west at last, and led apart that people over the mountains into Belrond, ere the rising of the moon. At length the Vanyar and the Noldor came over Ered Lune, the Blue Mountains, between Erlador and the westmost land of Middle-earth, which the elves after named Balorand, and the foremost companies passed over the Vale of Siron came down the shores of the great sea beyond Drengas in the Bay of Belar. But when they beheld it, great fear came upon them, and many withdrew into the woods and highlands of Belarund. Then Orome departed, and returned to Valinor to seek the counsel of Manwë, and left them. And the host of the Telari passed over the misty mountains, and crossed the wide lands of Eredor, being urged on by Elwë Singalo, for he was eager to return the Valinor and the light that he had beheld, and he wished not to be sundered from the Noldor, for he had great friendship with Finwë their lord. Thus, after many years, the Telari also came at last over Ered Lune to the eastern reaches of Belgarind. There they halted and dwelt a while beyond the river Gelon. We finished Chapter 3. We finished Chapter 3. We are 56 pages through this book of... Oh, that's a index of names. Holy shit, index of names. Oh, there's a note on pronunciation. C always has a value of K, never of S. This Celeborn is Celeborn, not Celeborn. In a few cases, such as Tulkas, Kamodari has a K, has been used CH as a Scotch Lodge or German Butch. Never that of the English Church. Bush. Oh my god. What do you guys think of the chunk we've read so far? Ah, my eyes are not happy with being like reading with my contacts on. Are you guys still here? Do you still have brains? Hi, Mike Fries. My brain is mush, but I'm enjoying it. I kind of get it. Ugh. I think I'm gonna lose my ability to speak, though. I might have to take a break from the book and come back on a later date, because I've been going for 2 hours and 25 minutes. It's nice being read to. Well, if people like it, maybe I'll keep, like, doing, story times. I was thinking of maybe, like, reading the Percy Jackson books on a stream. Those would be a lot easier to digest than the fucking Silmarillion. Or other books, but, I mean, it depends on what people want, I guess. I'm having fun reading this, even if my brain is melting. I don't think I can do any more, though, because my voice is, like, trying to die. And it's... 10 pages doesn't seem like a lot, but when I'm reading it out loud, 10 pages seems like a lot. Wait. Oh, shit. You know what? Fuck it. Let's finish chapter 4. Chapter 4 is 2 pages. Let's do chapter 4, and then we'll call it. I was like, oh my god, it's 10 pages to get to the next chapter, and then I was like, wait, 4? 6? Hold on. Wait a minute. Let's do chapter 4, and then call it there. Okay. And this one is called... Yeah, you've done this as well. It wears on your vocal cords. Yeah. Of Thingol and Melian. Also, I'm so sorry that I'm mispronouncing everything so badly. Okay. Melian was a Maya of the race of the Valar. She dwelt in the gardens of Loren, and among all his people there were none more beautiful than Melan, nor more wise, nor more skilled in songs of enchantment. It is told that the Valar would leave their works, and the birds of Valinor to their mirth, and the bells of Valimar were silent, and the fountains ceased to flow, when at the mingling of the lights Melan sang in Loren. Nightingales went always with her, and she taught them their song. She loved the deep shadows of the great trees. She was a kin before the world was made to give honor herself, And in that time, when the Quendi awoke, besides the waters of Cuvienen, she departed from the Valinar and came to the Hitherlands. And there she filled the silence of Middle-earth before the dawn with her voice and the voices of her birds. Now, when their journey was near its end, as has been told, the people of the Telari rested along in the east Beleren, near the river Gillian, and at that time many of the Noldor still lay to the westward, and in those forests that were afterwards named Neldrith and Region. Elwë, lord of the Telari, went often through the great woods to seek out Finwë, his friend, in the dwellings of Noldor, and it chanced on a time that he came alone to the starlit woods of Nan Elmoth, and there suddenly he heard the songs of nightingales. Then an enchantment fell on him, and he stood still, and far off beyond the voices of the Lomindali he heard the voice of Melian, and it filled his heart with wonder and desire. He forgot then utterly all his people and all the purposes of his mind, and following the birds under the shadow of the trees he passed deep into Nanamoth and was lost. But he came at last to a glade open to the stars, and there Melian stood, and out of the darkness he looked at her, and the light of Amon was in her face. She spoke no word, but being filled with love, Elwë came to her and took her hand, and straightway a spell was laid unto him, so that they stood thus while long years were measured by the wheeling stars above them, and the trees of Non Elmoth grew tall and dark before they spoke any word. Thus Elwë's folk who sought him found him not, and Olwë took kingship of Teldari and departed. And it is told hereafter, Elwë Singallo came never again across the sea to Valinar so long as he lived, and Melian returned not thither while their realm together lasted. Bout of her there came along both elves and men, a strain of the Aenir who were there with Iluvatar before Ea. In the days he became a king renowned, and his people were all the Eldar and Beleren, the Sindar they were named, the Grey Elves, the Elves of Twilight, and the King Greymantle was he. Elu Thingol in the tongue of that land, and Milan was his queen, wiser than any child of Middle-earth, and their hidden halls were in the Menengroth, the thousand caves, in Doriath. The great power Melidan lent to Thingol, who was himself great among the Eldar, for he alone of all the Sindar had seen with his own eyes the trees in the day of their flowering, and the king, though he was of Ulmenyar, was not accounted among Morinquindi, but the elf of the light, mighty upon Middle-earth, and of the love of Thingol and Melin, there came into the world the fairest of all the children of Iluvatar that was or shall ever be. Okay, we have finished 4 chapters. I think that's good. Oh my god, there's so many, like... I'm looking at this. Yay! Yay! This is a... Okay. Wait. Oh. Elwë, Melin, the Maya? Thingol. Okay. Okay, so Elrond is descended from them. Elwë, Melodin... Cradle Luthran, who got together with Beren, which was, I think, was human. Then Dior Nilmoth, Elendril Elwing created Elrond, who got together with Celebrand, which was the daughter of Galadriel, creating Arwen, Elohir, and Elladan. Woohoo! Yeah, I would love to continue at a later date. I don't know when that'll be, but I want to finish this book at some point. It is my goal to learn more of the lore. Because I have, like, small specks of the lore that I know bits and pieces of. Like, I knew Aloran was Gandalf. And I know about, like, the 5 lizards, but I don't know all their names, and I don't know all their true names. But I want to learn all of this. I might have to watch YouTube videos to have this stuff translated for me, because it's so hard to digest. How huge is the book? It's not huge. We are on page 59, and there's 378 pages of, like, the book. I mean, there's There's more pages after that, but there's like an index of names, and then there's like there's family trees and stuff. Yeah. The House of Beor and the mortal descendant of Elrond and Elros. Wait. Okay. House of Hador, Dorlimin, people of Hiloth, Helen of Birthrill, the Sundering of the Elves, and some of the names given to their divisions. All that shit. Oh my god. You want to hear about Fëanor and the crafting of the Silmaris? Fëanor and the crafting of... Yeah! Yeah! Where is that? I see... Okay, we have... The next chapter is Elimdar and the Princes of Eladel. Fëanor and the Unchaining of Melkor. Of the Silmaris and the Unrest of Noldor. Wait, is there a... Okay. Yeah, so that's chapters 6 and 7, I think. Then the Darkening of Valinor, Flight of the Noldor, of Sindar, of the Sun and Moon, and the Hiding of Valinor of Men, the Returning of Noldor, Beleriand and its realms, Noldor and Beleriand of Noldor, the Coming of Men to the West, Ruin of Beleriand and the Fall of Lofkin, of Beren and Luthien. Beren and Luthien was a song that Aragorn sings in the Fellowship of the Ring. And Frodo was like, "What are you singing?" And he's in Elvish, and he's like, "Oh, it's the tale of Beren and Luthien." The fifth battle, Turin, Timbar, Ruin of Dora, Tor and the Fall of Gondolin, Voyage of Arendelle and the War of Wrath, of the Rings of Power in the Third Age. Huh. House of Finwë, Descendants of Olwe and Ewe, House of Belroy, House of Hador and the People of Health, the Sundering of Elves. Huh. Yeah. Oh my god. That was so much. There was so much. But yeah, we are 59 pages in to chapter 5. I would say probably not a fourth of the way through. Probably 1/6 of the way through. Luthien's won the first elves. Nice! Okay, okay. I'd say we're probably about 1/6 of the way through. So maybe I'll split this up into like 6 streams or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm gonna call it here. Thanks. I feel like I butchered the name so bad, and I'm so sorry. But, why did I want to read this book on stream? Yeah, good night. Good night. I'm gonna go to my ending scroll. Well, actually, on Twitch, let's see who to raid. Rival time? Maybe. I can try to play Rivals with you, Shadow. I'm not gonna stream it, though, because I have my stupid Bluetooth one, and it's absolute hell. Okay, is there anyone I'm following streaming? Ooh, Rainy is streaming. Yeah, let's get her. Get her. Let's get Rainy. Rainy's chill. So on Twitch, we're gonna raid Rainy Renton. On YouTube, we're gonna... Having to read this entire thing out loud for your YouTube channel, the Silmarillion is not... okay. Yeah. I'm just reading it on stream because, like, fuck it. Like, you know? I've been wanting to read this, and I think this is the only way I'm actually gonna get through the book, but we got through 4 chapters. We're on chapter 5. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes. Yeah, it's not easy, and I have butchered a lot of the names. And I am now ending the stream because I need to, like, stop because my voice is dying. John's sleep stories. I'm gonna look up your shit. Maybe you can pronounce stuff better than me. But yeah, on Twitch, let's get Rainy, and we will end this stream. But Thank you everybody so much for watching the past, present, or future. If you like what you saw, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. I hope everybody has a banging day or night, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.